In this episode, I'm joined by the brilliant Dr. Gila, a JI certified parenting coach, a certified clinic coach, clinical psychologist, and neuropsychologist. But most importantly, she's a single mum to a beautifully complex child. Dr. Gila specializes in supporting single parents through her approach of connection, not perfection. She's deeply passionate about helping parents build healthier relationships with their kids and themselves. I loved this conversation, and I hope it brings you the same sense of insight and reassurance that it brought me. Let's jump in. Hey, Dr. Gila, lovely to have you here on the M.Y.T.E Podcast today. Thank you for being so patient.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you. I'm glad to be here.
I've really been looking forward to having this chat with you today because your work with supporting parents, especially parents who have got children with these big, big emotions, I feel is needed now more than ever. So it'd be great to pick your brains and have a chat, and just learn from you and hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's so much to cover.
Yes, most definitely. Can we jump straight in and you tell us a bit about your journey as a parent, and what's led you to the work that you've done today, your qualifications, your background, and all that kind
Mhm.
of thing?
Yeah, sure. So I actually started as a psychologist and a neuropsychologist. And I like to tell people that because what I like to remind you is that even with all of my fancy degrees and training and experience, it has still been challenging. I am a single mom to a kiddo that I would describe as strong-willed. He's neurodivergent and it's challenging. And so
Mm.
I took a deep dive into figuring out how to parent him the way that he needs and deserves in a way that is aligned with my own parenting values. And in that process, I became really passionate about supporting other parents. And so I became a certified parenting coach
Mm.
and a certified clinic coach. And I'm also a speaker. And now I love supporting other parents. I can absolutely relate to how challenging it is when you have a kiddo who has these really big feelings, big emotions, and also I think some like different needs sometimes than your typical kiddo. And so this is something that I don't think anyone should do alone. You know, one of my mottos is even if you're on your own, you don't have to do it alone.
Oh, that's
Mm.
really reassuring.
Yeah. And I didn't, I think there's a lot of fear around single parenting, and a lot of people, myself included, stay in unhealthy relationships longer than maybe they should
Mm.
because of those fears. And so that's part of my message is that even if you are the only adult in your home,
Mm.
you can still get support and you still deserve support. And there are lots of different ways that that can look.
That's lovely. You mentioned about these amazing qualifications that you have, and all the work which you've just told me that went into you becoming qualified. What did you say, 8 or 9 years?
Yeah, I went to school for far too long.
Yeah.
That's what I like to say. All it means is I went to school for a really long time and I'm a bit of a brain nerd. So
Yeah. But what I love about what you said is also like just through your own parenting your own child has taught you so much.
so much. I mean, life is our biggest educator, right? And our kids. I mean,
Yeah.
I've learned so much from my kiddo, and the challenges that we have sort of worked through together have taught me so much. Figuring out how to handle that have taught me so much. And I do think that these challenging kids are in some ways our best teachers. I mean,
Mm.
um, they really require us to be more thoughtful, intentional, and do the work around parenting. I like to say that strong willed kids demand the kind of respect that every child deserves. And I think that a
Mm.
lot of a lot of parents learn certain lessons when their kids are teenagers that kids who are a little more strong-willed, a little more neuroatypical might have opportunities to work on sooner because they really challenge us to really think through these things. Yeah.
How do you think like childhood is changing these days?
Mm.
You know, like with all of the technology and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, what are some of the things I don't know that you do or that you teach other parents, help support other parents in doing to support their children if they are going through a bit of a challenging time?
Yeah. So those are two separate, really big questions, I think. How is childhood changing? That's a huge question. Certainly technology is a huge piece. And technology use comes up with almost every client that I work with. It
Mm,
comes up in my own home.
mm,
I want to say if you're struggling with this,
mm,
it absolutely makes sense. You're not alone.
mm,
This is something that most of us did not grow up with this
mm,
level of technology. And so we as a society and we as individual parents are figuring it out, right? It's like that
mm,
expression, you're learning to fly the plane while I don't, I'm terrible with expressions. You're learning to
mm,
fly while the plane is in the air.
mm,
So we are figuring it out and we're going to make mistakes. And, that's one of my big messages that I think I say in every interview that I do is perfection is not the goal.
mm,
And there's two reasons for that. One is that it's just not realistic. I mean, honestly, I don't even know what it means to
mm,
be a perfect parent. But
mm,
even if there was such a thing, it's not realistic because we are human and we are parents and we are parenting in a society where there are so many challenges that we are trying to figure out on the fly, on the go. No one hands you a manual of how to do parenting. And if they did, there would probably be at least 150 different versions of that manual because there's
mm,
so many different opinions about
mm,
what you should and shouldn't do. So it is this process of sort of figuring out what feels aligned for you and your family. But the other piece is that being perfect as a parent is actually not, I think, is not desirable. It's not
mm,
even helpful.
mm,
And of course, I'm talking about imperfection within reason. We're not talking about abuse and things like that, but making your normal day to day mistakes, saying and doing things that you later regret as a parent. These are opportunities that we are modeling for our kids that being human means being imperfect. And
mm,
it is an opportunity to model how we grow through and from those experiences, how we reconnect and repair. We are talking before about how our kids are our greatest teachers in some ways.
yeah, yeah,
These moments, like each of my hardest parenting moments where I have done or said something that I regretted,
mm,
I have learned so
mm,
much from those moments, right?
mm,
Those moments are our
mm,
greatest teachers. And so
mm,
these are opportunities. So I want to say if you're struggling with the technology piece, and it's not just technology, I think there's a lot that has changed in our society, and there's so much more like pressure and expectations. There's a lot more connectivity around the world, which is beautiful and positive in a lot of ways, and also challenging and potentially dangerous in some ways, right? But
mm,
I think we often black and white it, right? Screens are bad,
yeah,
tech is bad, but there's actually
yeah,
some real beautiful pieces to it. So I'm
yeah.
gonna pause there. I know that was a lot, a lot.
Yeah, no, I love that. Just you reiterating what you said there about how we learn from getting it wrong. And that is
Mm-hmm.
such a valuable lesson for our children, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with my teenager. I've got three girls, and I had a conversation with my eldest daughter the other week. And I sort of was there, you know, sort of with open arms, sort of saying to her, I don't know the answer to this, and I don't know if I don't know what to say to you. It was literally like I really don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's okay not to know and just
Yeah.
trying to figure it out as we go, because I think they sometimes look at us and expect us to know
Mm-hmm.
everything.
Mm-hmm. And we
Um,
look at ourselves and expect ourselves to know everything, and we
yeah,
don't. And
yeah.
again, I think that it's an uncomfortable feeling, right?
Mm,
And there are certain situations where you want your child to feel safe, that you
mm,
have you have them, you have their back,
mm,
they are safe in your presence, you have things under control. But there are times when you don't.
mm,
And
mm,
I think it is okay to name that and to model how you handle that, right? How you handle it when you don't know the answer, because that honestly is one of the most important skills for our kids.
mm,
Um, I do some speaking in schools and parent groups, and one of the really popular topics is growth mindset. Growth mindset
mm,
is one of the most important things that we can
mm,
teach our kids, model for our kids,
mm,
because right, it's more important. How you figure things out is more important than the information, right?
mm,
And so this
mm.
is something that we can model for our kids, that process.
Most definitely. So, what are some of the things that you do or that you share with your families that support them? So, you mentioned about growth mindset and encouraging that open sort of communication and modeling the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you do? And again, the reason I ask you this, I have a friend who's got two younger children, and she was asking me this question the other day. She was sort of saying to me, I don't know how to respond. Her little girl has been struggling to go out at the point where she doesn't want to leave the home. She feels quite safe and feels comfortable at
Mm-hmm.
home. And she's sort
Mm-hmm.
of saying, "Oh, I don't want to go out today, Mum. I just want to stay indoors. I want to stay
Mm-hmm.
home." But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, there's things that we need to get out and do, and there's places that we need to go. And it may be that, they have their school to go to. And
Mm-hmm.
she was saying, I don't know how to react to it because she's getting really emotional.
Yeah, the child is getting emotional.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
then I think as a
Yeah.
parent, you know, we want our children to feel heard and we want
Yeah.
them to feel like as best we can, we understand where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's certain things that we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, oh my goodness, so much to unpack here. So the way that I think of things is that there are three key sort of pillars, pieces, components that each of us that are part of this parenting process, this parenting journey. And that is, and I like to think of it as a tree.
Mm,
So the roots of the tree is the parent piece. This is really understanding and sort of attuning to your own stuff, right?
mm,
Both in terms of what your values are in parenting, your mission,
mm,
your vision for your relationship with your child, and also what you are bringing to parenting. So your inherited narratives, your triggers, your
mm,
coping mechanisms, right?
mm,
And really tapping into and building on, so tending to your own needs in the parenting journey. And if you think about a tree, when you have really sort of firmly rooted roots, when they're in the ground strongly, and they can be gnarly and twisted and knotted and turning, but when they're strongly in the ground, then when the wind blows, when a storm comes, the tree is still going to be standing. That is really sort of this core piece that is so important, is grounding into our own piece of what we're bringing to the relationship.
mm,
The trunk, I like to think of the trunk as the empowered piece. This sort of, I like, my whole body sort of gets like stronger as I think about it, right?
mm,
This empowered piece, which is understanding our children. And both in terms of what is typical or expected development, whether they are neurotypical or neuroatypical, right? What would we reasonably expect at a particular area of development, and how does development happen? And also our specific child. Each child is, of course, beautifully unique. And learning to really understand our child and attuning to our child is so important. And then the branches and the leaves and all of that, that is the connection, the relationship between the parent and the child. And just like in a tree, you might have leaves that work in one season and then don't work in, right? They fall off. So maybe that's a very specific strategy, like getting your child to brush their teeth by pretending there's an angry lion in their mouth that you're attacking with the toothbrush, right? So that might work in one season and then it falls off the tree and it doesn't work anymore. But the branch, the general concept of using play, using connection, that is still going to be there. And then you're going to grow some new branches as the child grows, as you grow as a parent. And so in the situation, so there's the parent piece, the child piece, and the relationship piece. And I think that often we tend to focus on one of those pieces and they all work together. So if you think of that tree, we don't grow a tree by growing the roots, check that off the list. Now we're going to grow the trunk, check that off the list. Now we're going to grow the branches. We don't. They all grow together and they inform each other. There's all this like feedback between them. And so the better you're able to understand your child, the better you're going to be able to stay regulated in those tough moments. The better you understand yourself and what you're bringing to the table, the better you're going to be able to show up in relationship with your child and probably understand your child better. And so they all interrelate. So in the example that you gave of the child who is saying, I need more downtime at home. So I, of course, don't know the specifics of this family and what they're already doing. But one thing that I would say is I think that we, and I say we because I do it too, right? We all have a lot of like really deeply ingrained, internalized societal expectations and narratives. And we often do things because we think that we need to, we should, that's just how it's done, right? So, and often those things don't work for our child. There's a lot of what I call inconvenient truths in parenting. And one of them is that sometimes our child's energetic needs might not fit in to what we think we need to do or want to do. And so I do think, like I can tell you from related to that specific example, my son, who is, I have to say, very insightful about his own needs sometimes. It's really beautiful. And he helped me understand several years ago that he really needs more downtime at home. He said to me at one point, you know, I need one day of the week where we don't leave the house, right? This helps me. And so it's not always possible. And I will say, as he's getting older, I've noticed a shift. And also, he's been in different schools throughout the years. We've had a bumpy schooling journey. And there have been times where he's been really unhappy at school and having a really tough time at school. And in those times, he needs more downtime at home.
Okay.
He's now in a school where he is really happy and thriving.
Brilliant.
And as he gets older and as he's happier at school, I notice that those energetic needs, that sort of, having to like recoup on the weekend is a little bit less than it was at different points.
Yes.
But when that was the case, I really tried to prioritize that. And it's not always easy because that is not how our society works, right? Most people have so many activities and parties and this, that, and the other. And I do think that it's really important to give yourself the permission to look at what does my child need, not the hypothetical child, not the child that someone's writing about on their blog, but my child. What do they need? What does my family need? What do I need as a parent? And to give yourself permission to prioritize based on that. And the reality is that what you just described, like energetic needs are highly variable. So someone who is really an introvert, for example, they're going to have very different energetic needs than someone who's an extrovert. So, and you might have the child with ADHD who, if they don't get outside and run around for an hour a day, they are going to be really dysregulated. And then you have a highly sensitive child who, if they are out around a lot of other people for too much time, they're going to be dysregulated. And that dysregulation might look different for both of them, but their needs are very different. And so it may be that your friend's child is absolutely right, that she needs more downtime at home. And I know that that's easier said than done, especially if you have multiple kids with different needs. And I work with a lot of single parents. So when you have multiple kids with different needs, or your kids have different needs than you have, and you're the only adult around, it's a big challenge.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge. And I want to name that, right? And that if it's hard for you, it makes sense again, right? And I do think it's important to listen to our kids when they're telling us what they need, right? That's one of the most powerful things that we can do, is listen to our kids.
What you've said is so, so relatable. That even in my own situation, like I say, I have three girls and their needs are very, very different. And only this morning, it's been such a beautiful day here in Devon over the last few days. And I've been doing lots of work, and it's the kids are off. They've got their Easter break here, their Easter holidays. So I was like, right, we're all getting up. We're going to go out and we're going to head to the beach, and we're going to have an hour and a half on the beach, and we're going to be together just for the morning. And my middle child was adamant she didn't want to go because we had a day out yesterday. Only a couple of us, but for the whole day. And she was saying to me, Mum, I really don't want to go today. I just want to be at home. I don't want to be going out, and I don't want to be doing that today. But we think we know best. And I was like, no, come on, we need to get some sun, and we're going to do this. And we did, and we were only out for an hour and a half, and it was lovely. But I didn't listen. I didn't listen. I mean, and again, having three children and them all being very, very different. They're very different kids.
And so sometimes listening doesn't always mean the child gets exactly what they want. I want to say that, right? Especially because there are realities that get in that way. Like you're describing, you have three kids. They might have different needs. And also, I want to say your needs also matter, right? We often don't give that credit, right? Your boundaries, your needs also matter. And so sometimes we have to get creative in meeting those needs. So in your situation, for example, maybe your kiddo, what she's telling you is, I need recovery time, right? I need that restorative downtime that's different than being out and about. And so a few questions that I might ask is, and I am a big believer in having collaborative conversations with our kiddos when we can. It's not always possible, but when we can, really engage them. And again, to give them a voice. Kids pretty universally want a voice. Some of them are more vocal about wanting it than others. I have a very vocal kid about that. And it's very, very important to him. And so giving them a voice is so important. And sometimes, even if you can't accommodate exactly what it is that they want, giving them the experience of being heard and understood in that voice goes a long way, right? So if you have a conversation, for example, and you say, oh, I really hear you. It sounds like it's a lot for you when we're out and about, and you have this need to recover from that. That makes so much sense. And thank you for sharing that with me, right? That is a really, it's a beautiful thing that she can recognize that about herself and articulate it to you, and is comfortable articulating that to you, right? You clearly have a good relationship with her, that she's able to advocate for herself and communicate that with you. And she didn't throw a fit or anything like that from the sounds of it, but she was letting you know, this is what I've noticed about myself. This is what I need. And so, and you can acknowledge that and problem solve around, how can she get some of that recovery time that she needs in the context of other people getting what they need in this situation, right? So maybe that means she gets more gadget time than she normally would when you get back. Or maybe she gets a half hour to do gadget time while you're packing up the bags and getting everyone ready, and then you go. Or maybe she gets gadget time when you're at the beach, right? Maybe it's not about the gadgets. Maybe it's more about not having people, not having to do certain things when she's out and about, right? So maybe there's things about being out of the house that aren't about the gadget, but are about having to interact with other people or carry all the belongings, or right. So there's all these different things that could be coming into play. And so getting curious is such a powerful tool, right? Our curiosity, getting curious and really listening to what is it about this that feels hard, and what can we do to meet some of those needs, even if we can't do exactly what you want.
And that, I suppose, is like the crux of building those relationships, isn't it? And building a stronger relationship between yourself and your family.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the term I use, it's hard to figure out. Like there's so many different, there's peaceful parenting, conscious parenting, responsive
Yeah,
parenting. What do they all mean?
yeah,
I tend to use connection-based parenting, but
yeah.
really I think the most accurate is respectful parenting. I don't use that because I think the word respect is one of the most misused and misunderstood words,
Mm,
because often it is used to mean
mm.
compliance,
Yes, yes,
deference, right?
yeah,
Obedience.
yeah.
When I say respect, what I mean is viewing and treating the other person as if their experience, their perspective, their voice is valid and worthy.
Mm,
And we as a society have this sort of hierarchical belief of
mm,
parents are,
mm,
above children. And there
mm,
are some ways that that is necessary. We have to keep our kids safe. We have to keep them healthy. And
mm,
sometimes that does require a touch of that hierarchy.
mm,
But sometimes our kids are at the top of the hierarchy, right? Sometimes our
mm,
kids have inner wisdom and
mm,
abilities that we as adults lost a long time ago,
mm,
right? And
mm.
so being able to have that give and take of power in a way, right? So that we are not always just telling our kids what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. We are also listening, and we are also following their lead when it's appropriate.
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Gila, that's really touched my heart. That was absolutely
Hmm.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I feel
Yeah.
like anyone listening to this is going to feel so reassured. You
Hmm.
certainly made me feel reassured.
Oh, good.
So, so that's so lovely. How old is your son?
He's 10.
He's 10. Okay. So you're a single mum too.
Hmm.
What's been some of the hardest sort of parts around that? And like I
Mm.
say, for me, I feel very fortunate. My now husband, we only got married a couple of years ago, but I've been with him a long time. Um, but we're in it together. So when
Yeah.
I'm struggling, and there are times I am struggling, I've got someone that I can then lean on and say, right, I really need your support here. Can you sort of step in?
Yeah.
Um, and I totally hear that that's not the case for everybody. So what are
Yeah.
some of the hardest parts that you found navigating being a sort of single mum? Um, and what's helped you the most, would you say?
Yeah. Another really big question. Great. Um, so one thing that I like to name when I'm talking about single parents is that single parents are not homogeneous. It's not a homogeneous group, right?
Mm,
There are lots of different paths to single parenting. There are
mm,
lots of different ways that single parenting looks. Even within the same path to single parenting, it can look
mm,
very different. And I also want to say I hear so often from parents who are married or partnered, and they say, I have a partner, I have a
mm,
spouse,
mm,
but I really feel like a single parent.
mm,
Either their spouse travels a lot or is in the military, or they're physically not around,
mm,
or they are physically around, but maybe not emotionally,
mm,
energetically involved. And so that can be a really lonely feeling also. So I want to just say that it is, it is not that everyone experiences it exactly the same. But I have noticed a lot of commonalities, a lot of themes that come up a lot that I can certainly relate to, that I've experienced, and that a lot of my clients have experienced. And one of them is exactly what you just named, that when you are feeling really, when you're having a hard time, when you feel like you're about to lose it, you desperately need a moment. There's no one to tap in, right? There's no one to tag in. And that is extremely challenging. And it is a reality. It's one of those inconvenient truths, right? It is a reality. For some of us, we don't have someone in the home that you can tap in. And so, you mentioned technology, you mentioned devices. This is someplace where I think there's a lot of shame around using technology. And I think it's a very complicated, we could do a whole, hour plus chat all about screens and devices. But I do think that there is a role for using the tools that we have available. And sometimes that is your escape hatch, right? So I had a client who, she's a single mom by choice. And so it's all her. She has no one else. And she has two kiddos. And she was telling me about this one day that was her worst parenting day. And she was exhausted in the morning. She just wanted to rest. And her kiddo really just wanted to play. He wanted her attention. And she ended up, snapping and yelling and doing things that she regretted. And then she shut down and withdrew. And she ultimately said, watch a movie. She put them on, let them watch TV for 3 hours while she took a nap. And when I said to her, if at the very beginning you had said to him, I'm really tired, I really need a nap, you can go watch a movie, would he have watched a movie? And she was like, yeah, I think so. So what keeps us from doing that, from giving ourselves that permission to use that tool? And there's, of course, so many things, societal messaging, internal messaging, fears that keep us from doing that. And I do want to say, if that's happening on a very regular basis, then we need to look sort of lower in the stream, right, downstream of what's happening, or I guess high stream. Anyway, we need to look at the sort of lower, the different, what's underneath that, what's contributing to this being a recurring issue. But in that moment, give yourself permission to take that nap, right? Let your kid be on that screen, because you taking care of yourself is you taking care of your kid. Because ultimately what happened, they were on a screen anyway, but it happened after she did all these things that now she feels shame and guilt around. Now that there needs to be repair and reconnection. And so, giving ourselves permission to tend to our needs. And that's also modeling for our kids, right? So you're modeling, you know what? I'm really tired and I need to take care of myself. And I deserve to take care of myself. Right. So that's just one piece of it. There's so many other pieces to talk about, but I will pause there.
And just touching on that, because I hear you with that, and my first thought is I've done it so many times when I've got other things I know I need to get done. Then my first thought is, screens are, what is it doing to their brain? How's it affecting their brain? And it's the wrong thing to do, and that kind of thing. So it's that resistance. And then, like you say, after you've done it, you feel so bad about offering that, because deep down you believe it to be the wrong thing to do.
Right. We tend to be very black and white about screens, right? Screens are all bad. And there are some concerning things about screens, right? Don't get me wrong. And there are some actually really beautiful things that you can access through technology and through screens. It's not all created equal, right? And there are some purposes that it serves in our reality. Our reality is not ideal. And when you're a single parent, right, it's not ideal. Like, the ideal would be to be in community such that you didn't have to rely on that. But the reality, and a lot of us learned this like slamming into a wall during COVID, right? Because the reality was we had to work around some really significant limitations, and we just had to survive and thrive as best we could.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's amazing. So is there anything that you're working on at the moment, Dr. Gila, that you can share with us? Have you got anything coming up, any events or courses or any resources? I've had a look at your site and I know there's lots and lots of resources on there. And I will share your details on the podcast and on YouTube so that if anyone wants to get hold of you, they can.
Updating my website is on one of the projects I'm working on. I do have several free resources on there. I have a guided meditation. It's a short meditation. It's designed for single parents, but I've heard from lots of partnered parents who've listened to it and really enjoy it. And the way I designed it was so that it includes some visuals and some mantras that once you listen to the meditation a couple times, you can bring those to mind, even if you don't have 10 minutes to actually sit and listen to it.
Lovely.
You can bring those to mind in those tough times, right? And so I do want to say it's not just about using the screen like when you're stressed. So this is a good reminder to also say that it's also about working on how do we keep you from getting to that point in the first place, right? How do we keep you from getting to, so I like to talk about how we each have a metaphorical sink inside of us. And when the sink is really full, a few more drops of water make it overflow. And the overflow is that dysregulation. When you snap, you yell or you shut down. And same with our kids, they have sinks too. So the key is, how do we keep our sink empty enough so that when those drops come in, when our kids are doing the things that are pushing our buttons, we have space to take on that water without it overflowing. So really that is the key. And so things like this guided meditation, using the visuals and the mantras. I also have a guide for understanding tantrums and meltdowns. It is helpful both for understanding our kids' tough episodes, and I will say all of it applies to us as parents also. We have our own tantrums and meltdowns. They look different, but so I have a framework of the different things that can contribute to that, things that can fill your sink, as it were. And so you can download that as well. And I also have a free Facebook group. It's called Single Parenting with Connection, Not Perfection, that everyone is more than welcome to come and join. And the best way is to hop on my email list. When you download one of my resources, you'll be on my email list. And I email weekly, and that's where you find out about all of my programs and offerings. I do workshops and group programs, individual coaching, and a variety of different things. So I'd love to have you on the list and in my world.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today and for taking the time out. Yeah, it was so lovely to chat to you. I feel so much more reassured, and I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that are going to feel exactly the same.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And remember, none of us is perfect, and that's okay.
And that's okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Gila. We'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to learn more about M.Y.T.E, our M.Y.T.E program and its profound toolkit, jump over to our website and get in touch with us. We are here to support you and the children in your care.